Tired of big tech clashing with your Catholic values? Fide Chat is now live on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. It's private, encrypted, and built by Catholics for Catholics, with features like parental controls and more. Connect securely with family, friends, and groups. Download Fide Chat at fide.email. Technology without compromise.
The U.S. bishops met, and, well, the U.S. bishops met recently, have been going on. They still have a meeting going on. And this is also at the same time that there's a big meeting on the environment happening in South America. And the Vatican has been sending its representatives to both of these events. We'll start here with Bishop Christophe Pierre, the papal nuncio. He had something pretty wild to say, and it should show you everything you need to know about where they're going. This was shared on X by Matt Gaspers. This is just the video from the event.
I'm convinced that Vatican II remains the key to understanding what kind of church we are called to be today, and the reference point for discerning where we are headed. Pope Leo also is convinced of this. 2 days after his election, he told the cardinals, I quote, "I would like us to renew together today our complete commitment to the path that the Universal Church has now followed for decades in the wake of the Second Vatican Council." He then said that Pope Francis masterfully and concretely set forth this path in Evangelii Gaudium. Having received so much from the Council visions, the question now becomes, what does that ask of us as bishops? How are we to represent the Church the Council describes? It touches every aspect of our ministry. In our priesthood and episcopal vocation, we are called to be men of communion, pastors who walk with the people of God rather than standing apart. In evangelization and ecumenism, we must avoid both ideological narrowing and vague generality, proclaiming the whole gospel with clarity and love. In our engagement with public life, we are not chaplains to parties or distant commentators, but shepherds who bring the breadth of Catholic social teaching into the civic discourse in a way that transcends partisanships.
Vatican II is the way forward. I'm not surprised he said that, really. He actually says a lot more, so we'll go to the pillar for a little bit more. But he was essentially putting the U.S. bishops on notice that they need to do more in the civic realm. And it really does begin to show you, where they believe the gospel is. So the pillar published this under the headline, Nuncio to U.S. Bishops, Vatican II offers a roadmap to the Church's future. It does. It's a desolate future with few priests and few laity, not enough priests to give the sacraments. That's where this roadmap leads. And they are compelled to continue going down it because true Vatican II, in their mind, has just not been tried. So we must Vatican II harder. It's been a disaster for the Church. It truly has. He said, even if some are inclined to pursue a path that diverges from the pastoral vision of Francis, we know that the way forward is one that does not diverge, but advances on the path of Francis is the way of moving forward in the Church, said Cardinal Christophe Pierre, speaking to the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops at its fall plenary assembly in Baltimore. So just as an aside, it's very clear that what they're doing, and yes, Pope Leo is in on this, they're turning him into essentially the modernist answer to Pope St. Pius X. They are commanding us to follow the path of synodality. That's almost like the counter to the oath against modernism. And his documents related to it are almost like the modernist version of Pascendi Dominici Gregis, Pius X's landmark encyclical against the errors of the modernists. This, he says, is the way forward. Pope Leo constantly invokes his name and has assured us many, many times that we are going to continue on the path started by Francis. A lot of people don't believe him, even though it's clear he's doing that. And Christophe Pierre turns 80 at the end of January, so he's going to likely be asked to, he's going to submit his resignation as he's required to. He'll likely be asked to retire, but who knows? We might get a new papal nuncio, but it could very well be that Christophe Pierre will stick around for at least a little while. But he continued, saying he urged the bishops to continue discerning the future of the church by reflecting on the past, particularly through the lens of the Second Vatican Council. When asked about a Third Vatican Council, Pope Francis said the time is not right because we are still working to fully implement the Second Vatican Council, he said. His pontificate was marked not by innovation for its own sake, but that might fully reflect the vision of the Council. In this new apostolic letter on education, Pope Leo asked the same question when he urges educational communities to raise their eyes and know how to ask ourselves where we are going and why. This is in reference to him opening with the question to the bishops, where has the church in America been going and where is it going? This act of examining the direction of our journey is an essential part of Christian discernment. It's something that every bishop must do when thinking about the church entrusted to his care. He urged the bishops to look towards Vatican II as a map to guide and direct the future of the church. The documents of the Second Vatican Council gifted the church with a map for the journey ahead. Yet the territory that this map outlined was in many ways uncharted. The vision of the church was a vision for the future, the prophetic orientation to a world that was only beginning to take shape. He goes on to say Francis called the church to speak with a single evangelical voice, prophetic, merciful, and uniting in service to the poor. He suggested there will be continuity between Francis and Leo, adding that Leo's early writings build off Francis's legacy in Vatican II. And he goes on to say that the council and the popes urge us and command us to address the world's problems. I mean, the path the church has been on since the 60s has been one of rapid decline. It just has been. Fewer Catholics go to Mass regularly than ever before. Fewer Catholics receive the sacraments. Fewer Catholics take the sacraments all that seriously. Fewer of them believe in the real presence. That's the path we've been on. Calling for certain sins to be suddenly accepted by the church in the name of mercy and accompaniment. But a good example of what this looks like when the rubber hits the road of activism and the rest, we go back to Info Vaticana, where they give us this headline. Parallel before COP30, the fundamental contribution of the Holy See and the local churches must be to raise the level of awareness. If you know what COP30 is, it's an environmental conference going on in Brazil. It's all about the thermometer problem, that problem with carbon and, hotter summers and all the rest of that. The church, through not just Pope Leo and not just Pope Francis, but Benedict XVI at least, and John Paul II in his latter years, fully aligned the church with this issue in the secular realm. They trusted the expertise of the secular experts and aligned themselves fully with it. And that's what he's talking about. So when he's talking about this, when he says the fundamental contribution of the Holy See and the local churches, that's your U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, it's your Brazilian Bishops Conference, that's the church in Oklahoma City, that's the church in Dallas, Texas, that's the church in Dubuque, Iowa, wherever you are, the fundamental contribution must be to raise the level of awareness on that environmental issue. Not the fundamental contribution of the Holy See being the witness to the gospel of Jesus Christ and the teaching of the faith and bringing souls to Christ and the joys of having the door to salvation open to you if you merely acknowledge Christ for who he is and then pick up your cross and follow him and do what he told you to do. No, not that. It's to raise the level of awareness on the green stuff. Congratulations, Cardinal Parolin. From the article, quote, Parolin acknowledged that the phenomenon of the thermometer issue, quote, involves a growing number of people, especially the most vulnerable, recalled recent events with authorities from the Pacific Islands, threatened, he said, by disappearance due to rising sea levels. Cardinal emphasized that the Church, from the Holy See, has committed itself to this cause, citing Pope Francis's encyclicals Laudato Si and Laudate Deum, and affirmed that local churches have also aligned themselves with this approach. In his view, the church's role is not to offer technical solutions, but to raise awareness and provide an ethical response to the crisis. And he goes on and says what he said at the beginning. Nothing new under the sun. The insistence on ecological discourse and multilateralism has become commonplace in Vatican circles, but no less worrying for that. Is this still an evangelizing effort, or rather a complacent dialogue with worldwide structures that promote an anthropocentric and secularized view of creation? This is the authors of the piece asking this question. The Cardinal even quoted St. Paul, "The time is short," an expression that in the Apostles' mouth alluded to the urgency of conversion, not to the implementation of the Paris Agreement. But this blurring of the lines between the spiritual and the environmental has become almost the norm. Today, faith seems to be measured by carbon that's been put out into the atmosphere. He argued that this conference should focus less on new rhetoric and more on fulfilling existing commitments, reducing how much carbon we use, providing aid to the most vulnerable countries, and building resilience to natural disasters. What's needed isn't grand pronouncements, but determination and action. Now, I'm going to ask you, how is that speech any different than something you might hear at the Labor Party, from the Labor Party, or from the Democrats in the United States, or from the Greens in Germany, or from any secular left-wing politician? How is any of that any different than what they say? How is that the gospel? Cardinal Parolin's first job as a cardinal is to spread the gospel, to assist the Pope in spreading the gospel. That is his actual literal first job. But they don't believe in it. They don't. None of them do. You see it through these things. They co-opted the gospel for political purposes. And it's an amazing error that they're making. I'm curious what you think about this. Are you that surprised? When you put what the papal nuncio said together with what Cardinal Parolin said, and even what things I've covered earlier, things going on in Italy with the James Martin stuff, things going on in other countries where all the bishops, for whatever reason, just love that sin and reject what the church taught beforehand on it. When you see all that in action, and then they have the audacity to invoke the gospel by aligning the church with a materialist, false gospel, is any of that surprising? They insist it comes from Vatican II. Maybe we should believe them. Let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. You like and subscribe. If you haven't, it does help. Sharing this on social media helps a lot too. If you want to support the work we do here at Return to Tradition, options in the description box below. Patreon, Subscribe Star, all that stuff. The Subscribe Plus button is the old join button. Helps keep the daily messages coming. Get access to a patron Discord server. The occasional extra thing I give only to supporters of the channel, and is greatly appreciated. But whatever you do, pray for Cardinal Parolin, for Pope Leo, and all the rest of them. They desperately need your prayers. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.